What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here, and I want to talk about the NFL draft. We have the seven Steelers draft picks. We have a number of undrafted free agents. We'll break down the undrafted free agent pool later in this week. I do want to talk more about the seven picks, specifically the day three guys, because didn't really talk about them aside from Will Howard. But let's go over the Steelers' draft class and how I kind of view it. First of all, love the first two picks of this draft. I have been a big fan of Derek Harmon. I'm a big fan of Caleb Johnson. Derek Harmon to me was the most natural fit at defensive line in the entire class for the Steelers. He reminds me a lot of the old Steelers five techs. Really explosive, disruptive, led the NCAA in pressures last year, was second in pressure rate. He really had a breakout season. I mean, there's not a lot of variance on this guy's tape. He's very consistent. He's very solid in the run game. He will hold up on doubles. He's very instinctive, breaking down angles, deconstructing blocks. He's the type of guy as a pass rusher that I don't think is going to be super dynamic immediately, but I think he has a lot of potential to still unlock, and he's on the up and up. And I think that's really great. Caleb Johnson, on the other hand, is this type of running back that just fits Arthur Smith's offense so well. He's the type of guy that is a mid-zone, wide zone runner. You look at his ability to stay on the track, stay flat. It's great. His ability to press the line and manipulate defensive linemen in the hole, linebackers, safeties. He is so dynamic at doing that. He creates something out of nothing just through his patience and footwork behind the line of scrimmage. Now, I think the athletic traits are the big question, right? He didn't test all around. When he ran the 40, it was a 4.57. You look at his game speed, he really can fly. At his top speed, he reaches 22 miles per hour and breaks away from guys in the open field, even against really good Big Ten competition, which shows you he does have legitimate track speed when he gets going. I think, the acceleration, the immediate acceleration, I think there's some question about that, but when he gets going, he can fly, and his ability to have that patience and really set up defenders at the second level allows him to get going and find those open lanes. After contact, this guy has really solid contact balance. It's easy for him to break tackles, to slip tackles. It's hard for him to be brought down. He's a bigger back. I think he has to work a little bit on the three down ability. I think he has more receiving upside than people are giving him credit for. I would just didn't ask him to do it a lot, but when he did do it, I thought he had soft hands. I think he has the ability to have receiving upside. He needs to work on the pass pro. That's going to be his biggest thing. IDing, dangerous threat, different things like that. I think there's a willingness there from him. I think it's going to be more about the technique getting going. So Jalen Warren and Kenny Gainwell will probably take those roles early on, but I do like Caleb Johnson. I think he's a glove-like fit. So these two picks, just in terms of value, fit, all that. I love them. Derek Harmon, Caleb Johnson. I'm not sure you could ask for a much better 1-2 to the start of this class for Pittsburgh. Then you get into round four, and Jack Sawyer is an interesting case. This was a guy that was projected to be a day two edge rusher, I think in a lot of people's minds, this is a steal in terms of the value. I think the lowest I've seen him on most expert mocks and expert boards is probably around the 90s, but a lot of them had him even up in the second round. So he falls all the way to the late fourth, and you nab him. That's good value in terms of perceived value there. I just personally, there's two things. One, I think the player is a little limited in some ways. I think Sawyer is a guy that's a strong run defender on the edge. I think that is going to be what really separates him from the rest of this group. Nick Herbig's a absolute dynamo pass rusher, and he's going to be probably that type of situational pass rusher. But when they face run heavy teams like Baltimore, Sawyer is going to come in handy there. And I think this was about value more than it was necessarily need. The Steelers weren't hunting edge rusher necessarily in this class, but when Sawyer fell to them, they took him. Listen, this guy's a football captain at Ohio State with winning aptitude. He's a leader. I think the Steelers' clear focus on this draft was to add high character players. They add team captains up and down the draft or very high character guys. And so that fit, I think, what they liked. Sawyer, though, to me, as a pass rusher, I'm just not sure there's a ton there of juice. And so that's probably going to be an under, that's probably going to be an opinion that a lot of people are going to flame me for and not understand. But listen, edge rusher is about a lot of traits. Traits make edge rushers elite. Specifically, they make you elite from the standpoint of pass rush ability. I think Sawyer doesn't have great bend. I think he's just got average. explosiveness off the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have great length. He is powerful, so he can get into your body, but for tackles that have 34-inch arms and can get into him first, it's tough for him to consistently get pressure. And when he does get pressure a lot on film, tackles are oversetting and tackles are doing different things that are kind of allowing him to get the inside gate. He's going to have to open that inside gate at the next level. I think there's ability to do that. He's got solid hand usage. That really shows up in the run game, his ability to deconstruct blocks. Right now, I think he's a run defense specialist that will have special teams upside and brings a high character player. I personally, I think there's other guys like Alec Iomenor that were on the board here that I probably would have looked at. But I understand from a values perspective, and I understand the vision of the Sawyer selection. I don't love the ceiling that you pick here, but he will probably be a solid rotational edge. So it's not a disastrous pick by any means. When I graded this in my article, I gave it a C. A lot of people will give it an A because Sawyer, obviously, big time name in his leadership and what he does. I just don't see a ton of upside as a pass rusher to Sawyer's game. But I do think he is a solid rotational piece for what they wanted to establish. Y.A. Black, man, very similar to Sawyer, but in terms of the fifth round, I mean, this is where these run plugging nose tackles go. He is a massive man, and he does what he does. He eats space. That is what he does. He's going to be a run plugging nose in the base package for the Steelers. Their Okie front. And I don't think he's going to do a ton of sub package pass rushing. He gets a little bit high in his pad level. Doesn't really have a ton of pass rush moves. I think he just needs a go to. He doesn't even need 3, 4 moves. I think having a lot of and a litany of pass rush moves is so overrated. I've seen T.J. Watt win the speed rush rip and dip for 7 years and lead the league in sacks. So I don't think it's as important as people think to have a litany of moves at your disposal. But what I do think is important is having at least a one go-to, and I think Black needs to develop that part of his game. But as a run defender, this guy's a space-eating hoss. He gets into your frame and he sets you back. He takes on double teams really well. He's a space-eating nose. He's a two-down nose tackle. That's the type of player that he is. When you get the specific matchups, this guy has the chance to really wreck shop in terms of the run game. So that's the type of player he is. He's just something the Steelers haven't had on their roster in quite some time. And after you get 299 spliced on you by your biggest rivals in the playoffs, this is the type of pick you make. And so I'm completely fine with the YA Black pick. This is where you take a guy like this. Will Howard, the type of a player you take if you want to get great value on a quarterback and have a guy with a very high floor. I think Will Howard, again, he was a captain at Kansas State before transferring to Ohio State. Played his best football down the stretch, just like Jack Sawyer. Both these guys came alive in the playoffs and played really well in crunch time, which I think having that kind of winner's trait is something the Steelers could use from both of these guys. Will Howard is the type of guy that's got great ability to layer deep balls, layer it over the middle of the field. His pressure to sack rate is very low. He's got an ability to really step up in the pocket and push the ball down the field, find the right guy. I don't think he's a lightning quick processor, but I think he's quick enough. He's a little robotic in the pocket at times, a little robotic in his movements, can freeze at times, a little similar to Mason Rudolph in that regard. But he is a guy that's not going to take a ton of terrible sacks, but he's not going to have a ton of off script creating. That's not really his game, but he can run a little bit. So if you need him to on 3rd and 5, get 5 yards, he could do it for you. This is a guy that had he run probably would have tested in the 4.7s. So he's got a legit ability to run. I kind of wish he would use it a little more. But I do see where Will Howard's with the vision with Will Howard's coming in, and I thought he should have gone in the 4th round. So getting him in the 6th, I think, is incredible value in this class. And then let's talk about the two 7th-round picks, Carson Bruner and the linebacker out of Washington, obviously the son of Mark Bruner, who was a former Steelers tight end and is a current area scout for the Steelers. So a lot of people aren't happy about this just because of the ties. I'll be quite honest with you. I understand the reasoning behind that, but you turn on the tape and I think this kid could play. He's got really solid downhill instincts. He is a forerunner type. He is a guy that does not play with fear. He comes down and he hits you hard and he takes on blocks and he takes on pullers without fear. I like that mentality. He's a good downhill athlete. The range from sideline to sideline, I think, is adequate for the position. I think he's got some really instinctual coverage reps in just short zones. I don't think this is a guy you're exactly going to say run the Tampa 2 pull runner position. He's a little stiff, I think, moving sideline to sideline. So the athletic traits are there, but they're not elite. So he'll be limited athletically, but I think he can even grow into a role where he has a limited kind of rotational role at some point. This guy's a good player. You see the special teams production. I think that's going to pop off right away. So this guy's the type of player you want in your locker room, to be quite honest with you. He's going to do the dirty things that people don't like to do. He'll make your bottom of the roster stronger, and I think he's a young guy with some upside. So I understand the angst over this pick, but to be quite honest with you, when I dove into Carson Brunner's tape, I really like this guy as a legitimate middle day three option. You get him in the seventh. I think this is, again, to me, good value compared to where I think a lot of people would view this guy. Dante Kent. So, I had no idea about Dante Kent when they picked him. To be quite honest with you, I had never heard of Dante Kent when he came off the board. So I watched some tape between that pick and now. Let's talk about him. Feast or famine. I mean, this guy has incredible ball production, but he also allows a ton of explosives. Certainly as a slot player, opens the gate too much outside, but in the slot, can play to his leverage a little more. Uses his speed really well. He's got the ability to do those speed turns and has really fluid hips, I feel like. The processing, I think, needs some work. Just kind of looking at route combinations. I think he's a little slow to react at times. He is fearless. Again, this is another guy that's fearless, team captain. He comes on, takes on the screen game, run game. He will tackle. He is a fearless player. He can punt return. I think that's another really key thing for him. So there's versatility in this guy. He is a fun little player, man. I think he's a slot player more than anything. So we'll see where Kent goes. Very athletic with ball production. I mean, these guys always have the potential to find it and turn it on. So he has the profile at least to find something. Obviously, was way off my radar, but I see why they took him. So we'll see kind of how that all constructs itself. So overall, I mean, I think this was a solid class. If you're looking at it to kind of really hone in on the trenches, I mean, they did that. Even if I don't value a fourth outside linebacker run setting edge like they did in Sawyer, he does do that quite well. Even when you look at, do you value two down nose tackles like Y.A. Black? Again, they focused on this, and that's the way to do it if you're going to. They are building these trenches out. Over these 3 years with Andy Weil and Omar Khan with the draft, they drafted three linemen, whether offensive or defensive, in each draft. They drafted two offensive linemen and one defensive lineman in 2023, three offensive linemen last year, and now two defensive linemen and an edge rusher this year. I guess in 23 would be four because Nick Herbig that. So they've really focused on the trenches. I think that's a key thing. If you're building a roster around a quarterback and you're trying to build physicality, and this is kind of what it's building to me, the Steelers, you're building out an offensive line that is to be reckoned with. You're building out a wide receiving room that has a guy like DK Metcalf in it. You're trying to give your guys weapons, right? Caleb Johnson, signing Pat Freiermuth long term. You're trying to keep around a core to when that quarterback comes in, that quarterback is going to have their ideal landing spot. I think that's always been the key thing here is, you look at teams like the Eagles with Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy, and you look at those guys and how they've matured and how they've developed over their careers, and a lot of it has to do with the landing spot and the surroundings they've had with them. And the Steelers are trying to do that. They have work to do. Coaching staff has a lot of work to do. I still question some of the coaching staff's things, but really, that's really what the Steelers are looking for. And so, this draft clearly had an identity to it with the Steelers, and they executed. And so that's what they did. That's just kind of my thoughts on these day three picks. I'm sure there might be some disagreement about a few of them, whether direction negatively or positively. But I do think this team is continuing to set an edge up front on the offensive and defensive side of the football, and that has been their focus through these first 3 years of this regime. All right, folks, we'll be back tomorrow. Longer episode coming tomorrow. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. For that, we'll talk about everything. Rookie minicamp should be coming up in about 2 weeks, and we'll have plenty from that as well. Thanks for listening, everybody.